Hey everyone, I'm excited to bring my friend Dennis Geelen to you today. He's an entrepreneur and author of several business books. He's created the firm Zero In Consulting, which focuses on building brands that customers love and employees love too, those that work there. He's also launched a separate entrepreneurial path focused on helping people become solopreneurs, which is a big thing since COVID started. He's releasing, as we speak, a book called The Accidental Solopreneur. It's something that I've loved getting my hands on and seeing, and it's not in a traditional business format, a boring textbook or anything like that. It's actually a narrative, a parable of what it's like for someone to think through the idea of, I'm no longer happy in corporate. I want something more for my life. And then that story unfolds and shows the journey, the ongoings, the feelings, the actions of what it takes for that person to go from frustrated corporate employee to thriving solopreneur. It's a really inspiring read. We broke it down in this episode, and we can see more from Dennis at his website, dennisgeelen.me. I'll have all the links to the show notes. I do want to leave you with one thing. He said something to me, which was essentially, I learned more in my first few years as an entrepreneur than I did in 2 decades in corporate. Let that sink in. Let that really mean something to you on the idea of potentially pursuing your own entrepreneurial path. And you can do this on the side. You don't need to leave corporate. As you know, I'm not a fan of everyone leaving corporate. Most people should stay there. But I want you to take away this idea that you can be an entrepreneur right where you are, and it can have massive benefits to your life and your personal growth, your income, your life options, all of these things. I really hope you listen today and absorb these ideas. The last thing I'll leave you with is if you enjoy anything that you're getting out of Uncage Yourself, I'd sincerely appreciate if right now you hopped on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, whichever one you use, and just left a quick review. It means a lot to me. It helps boost this show and helps us get in front of more people. Thank you and enjoy this episode with Dennis.
Growing up, society taught you to follow the script by choosing a career path and climbing the ladder. But for many people, this promise falls flat. Work suffocates them and life becomes painful. Here, you're trapped in what I call the corporate cage. Fortunately, there's a way out. You can take control of your corporate job and unlock a life of freedom. I call this living uncaged. Hi, this is your host, Matt Doan. I'm a coach, creator, and entrepreneur. Uncaging people is my mission because it's been my exact life journey. This show provides you the stories, principles, and tactics to make it happen. Welcome to Uncage Yourself.
Hey, Dennis, welcome to Uncage Yourself.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Thanks, Matt.
Oh, I'm so excited to dive into your new book, The Accidental Solopreneur. There's a lot of goodness here, and it's really unique. I'm not going to spill the beans on this. I want to make sure that you can unravel it for folks. So solopreneurship as part of a broader entrepreneurial thing that people want in their lives, that's one thing. We'll get to it. But before that, I want to talk about something that we've both experienced, which is corporate life.
Yeah.
We've been there. And I want to ask you, now that you've been out for a while and you're really big into helping others become solopreneurs, and you've got a broader set of businesses too, but take me back. What is one thing you really miss about corporate life?
Yeah. And it's something I didn't think I was going to miss in the beginning, probably because there was that initial, excitement of building my own business. But I eventually got to a point where I missed that team camaraderie. And you can manufacture that in different ways. I guess in your solopreneur business, you can have, a community of people that you engage with, but there is something a bit different about working alongside a group of people towards that same common goal and that camaraderie that comes with it. So there was a point in my solopreneur journey where I was like, man, I think I'm missing that. I think COVID probably played a part in that as well, of me missing it. But yeah, there's definitely a bit of a void there.
Yeah, COVID played a big role for sure. It's something that I don't think we put too much weight in when we leave. I left 5 months ago. You left before that, years before that. But there's something instinctual and important. We're wired for connection and community And a part of that's, the analog connection, actual seeing people in life. And I think I was just listening to a podcast right before this, Christopher Lockheed, who talks a lot about category design, beautiful like marketing perspective. He talked about analog natives and digital natives. You'd say generally most of the millennials and older are analog natives. We grew up without the cloud and social as from day one. Digital natives are Gen Z down to, the younger folks right now. And it's like you are in person, touch, feel, that's your analog state as your primary way of communicating and living in this world, or you are digital first, which is like you are through your screens first and you are in person, touch, contact stuff second. It's a very interesting paradigm shift, but we've still got to navigate, figure out what connection means to us in our own ways, right?
Yeah, that definitely. And I know for me, like my early corporate career, there was no such thing as work from home. Even if you had the ability to work from home, it was a very rare thing. It was you were in the office as a team working together. So that's what we knew. That's what I grew up with, I should say. That's your kind of comfort zone for team camaraderie, right? Whereas somebody nowadays who maybe has always worked remote, they don't know the difference. You don't know what you don't know, right? So
whole new world. Let's help them out. So, Dennis, let's get into a little bit of your backstory for those that don't know you. Give us a little bit of the play-by-play, the phases of your journey today.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say for the first 40 years of my life, I was that typical rule follower, follow the script, stay in your comfort zone type guy. And I was perfectly happy with that. Right? There's that script that society kind of lays out for us, where you go to high school, then you go to post-secondary, then you find your job, and then you buy a house, then you get married, and then you have some kids, and put a little bit of money away until when you hit 65, and then you retire, and that's when you get to enjoy yourself, right? That's kind of the script. And I guess for good intentions and for good reason, that has something that has been proven to kind of work, but not for everybody. And for me, that worked just fine until I started to hit around the age of maybe late 30s, early 40s. I was starting to get that itch. Like the first, 15, 20 years of my corporate life, I loved it. I was learning so much. I was excelling. I was getting promoted. I was, reporting into CEOs and CSOs at different companies and in different major organizations and learning a ton. And there's a high that comes with that. But then I kind of hit this plateau where I was kind of like, is there more to life than this? Like this whole time I've been learning and growing, but for somebody else's cause, for somebody else's business. And I finally started to have this thought around, what if I was to bet on myself? What would that be like? What would it be like to grow my own business? I toyed with the idea, but never acted on it until at the age of 43, for the first time ever in my life, I was laid off. Didn't see it coming. Completely threw me for a loop. And in fact, my first instinct was, okay, tomorrow I need to find a new job, right? This is all I know. I go into an office. I work 9 to 5. I'm a leadership guy. This is what I do. And I would say it was my wife's influence, her support, her coaxing that kind of said, hey, slow down for a second, Dennis. You just got a really good severance package. There's no immediate need for you to jump right back in. And immediately I'm thinking, yeah, but if I get a job tomorrow, I could just invest that severance package, right? Everything I was thinking about was completely around money. And she's like, but hold on, you've been talking the last few years about doing something on your own, betting on yourself. If there isn't a better time in your life to do that than right now, I don't know what is. And I took a step back and I'm like, yeah, maybe you're right. And she's like, and if you're going to do it, do it. Don't kind of do it. Don't do it for a month. Do it. Give yourself an entire year and do it. And that opened my eyes. I was like, yeah, if I actually take an entire year and I try and build my own business, at the end of that year, I'm probably not going to be wildly successful in a year, but I'll know by the end of a year, how's it going? At the end of a full year, if everything's going really well, awesome. I'll keep going. But if it's not, great. I've given it a year. I'll have no regrets. I'll know that I did it. I tried, and I can easily jump back into a corporate job at that point. That was 4 years ago. So obviously at the end of the year, it was like, hey, I think I've got something here. This is working. I'm going to keep going. And here I am 4 years later, got my consulting company Zero In, and now just recently started working with solopreneurs to help them do the same thing. So,
And I want to unpack both of those pieces in a second, but you said something very astonishing to me. I just want to call it out. You talked about getting a severance package and asking yourself, shouldn't I just invest that? I could go back to corporate light and invest it. And I think this is a very interesting pathway where people say, I think about money first, and I think about maximizing that. Everyone, for the most part, is about financial freedom. How do I maximize financial freedom? You optimize for that everywhere you can. I'm going to buy real estate properties. I'm going to do syndicated multifamily. I'm going to get these stocks. I'm going to think about crypto, right? And it's like everyone thinks about financial freedom first. And you said, at least subconsciously, no. There's a different form of investment that I can think about here. It is in my time. It is in me as my own asset. And when I invest in me and I give myself a chance and just like give that time to churn and build new muscle, that is a massively more leverageable type of asset than just like putting money into a rental property. And it's like, yes, you want to get those other cash flowing assets in motion over time. My argument would be, though, not at the expense of true kick-ass self-development, like real self-development, like time and money level of self-development, like you went down.
Yeah. And I got to be completely honest here, Bat. In the beginning, my mindset was still, hey, if I bet on myself, I can make a lot of money, right? It wasn't until I started going through the journey and started realizing the transformation in myself, in what my day-to-day looks like, in how my life is now being designed, that I came to that realization, boy, I'm getting a lot more than just some financial freedom here. I'm designing an entirely different life. That wasn't my intent in the beginning. It was kind of a happy accident that I stumbled across and then realized, well, there's way more to this than I actually realized.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I would say that's the idea, right? We all have to get to the point of what's the life we want to build. And some people get this point sooner rather than later. Some people have to go through a lot of trial and error to arrive that that's where they need to aim. But you ended up in a great place with it. You now know the life you want to build, and you're methodically taking experiments to build it. It's not clean and simple. It's winding. You fall off the path sometimes. You get back up, but you're aiming towards something which lights you up. And that's what we all need to stay glued to. So I interrupted you. I'm sorry about that. Talk to us a little bit about your businesses. We'll get to the book as well, but really, what are you doing out in the world right now?
Yeah. So the main thing is I started a consulting company called Zero In, and it went through several iterations, several more metamorphosis before I figured out what it was and what it should be and how it would look. But what it is today is it's a business consulting practice where I do a lot of workshops and I do a lot of consulting engagements. And the way I bill it, or the way I market it, is I help companies solve indifference. First of all, that gets people's eyes lighting up. That's not what you're expecting to hear. And that usually creates a follow-up question of, what do you mean? So then that allows me to explain, most companies have two main problems. You either have indifferent customers, where there's no reason for them to resonate with you, your brand, your products, your services, and that's a big problem. Or you have indifferent employees, where you haven't built this culture where people are passionate to come to work every day. It's just a job. So I'm going to help you solve either or both of those two problems. And that gets people's eyes lighting up. And really, I'm a customer experience, employee experience consultant. That would be the layman's term. That would be what everybody else would say. But what I've had to learn over time is different is better than better. So I had to market myself, brand myself differently. And I help companies solve indifference. So that was a huge learning curve, building that company, figuring out my niche, branding myself, packaging my services, how to attract clients. The amount of learning I had to do to get that company off the ground is more than I learned, in my 20 years of corporate. And I learned a ton, right? But suddenly I need to build this business from scratch. I had a ton to learn. And I was so naive. I had no idea I had to learn all this stuff, right? I just thought, hey, I'll create a company, I'll give it a logo, I'll build a website, and boom, tomorrow there'll be a bunch of clients lining up at my door, right? I wish.
It's such a powerful statement to say in a few years of just diving in the deep end with entrepreneurship that you learned and grew more than your entire corporate career before that.
Yeah.
That's profound.
I never had to think about things like branding and marketing and sales. I was an operations guy, right? I was a project management guy. I was a efficiency guy. I was a lean guy. I was an operations guy. I was not sales, marketing, branding guy. So I had to dive in and figure this all out.
Yeah. In my background in management consulting, I often, before I left, I'd say I have 15 years experience. And then when I left, I kind of looked back at that time and was like, actually, it seems more like I had 1 year experience replicated 15 times.
15 times. Yep. Exactly. That I can relate.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. So that's zero in.
Yep.
What else do we have from there?
So since then, I have started a few other businesses that did not go too well. Great learning experiences as well. I've partnered with other people where we've got some things going. But the main thing that I now have going as well is, and it's funny, I've been journaling or documenting my journey about starting Zero In, mostly on LinkedIn. And about a year ago, so now I'm 3 years in, a lot of people started reaching out and saying, hey, I want to do what you did. Hey, can I pick your brain for a minute? Hey, what do you think of this idea? Hey, will this work? Hey, how did you do that? And I was actually in the middle of writing another book. So I had written 3 books by that point. The first 2, don't read them. They were terrible. Third one, I figured it out and it hit bestseller, and that was a whole other revenue stream. Turned that into an online course, which was another revenue stream through Zero In. But I was in the process of starting another book. And I thought, hey, I'll replicate what I did with the Zero In formula. I'll just do it again. But with all these people reaching out, I said, you know what? I'm going to put this book on pause. I think there's another niche here where besides Zero In, I can also start up a solopreneur coaching business. There seems to be a market. Lots of people are asking for questions. There's a need there. I'll give this a try and see how it goes. So I'm kind of doing a side hustle to my Zero In. And so now the book, The Accidental Solopreneur, is about to come out. Just released an online course. I'm doing one-on-one coaching calls with solopreneurs. So that's a whole separate business now that seems to be off the ground and running quite nicely. So.
And what drew you to this? Obviously, it's logical, but what inside of you said, yeah, I want to go after this thing?
Well, I think I realized with my third book, The Zero In Formula, boy, I think I actually kind of like writing. Once I figured it out, once I started working with, good editors, once I started seeing what it really takes to write a good book and market and promote a good book and then sell a good book, boy, that was kind of intoxicating. I want to try that again. So I thought I'm gonna do that on the solopreneur side, and that just kind of led me down that path where, hey, I can replicate exactly what I did with Zero In, just in a different niche, right? I can do consulting, I can do coaching, I can do workshops, I can do books, I can do online courses. I just do it in a different niche now. I just take my playbook that I did for Zero In and replicate it.
Nice. So give us a little bit. If we're to open that book, what are we experiencing there?
Yeah. So the book itself it's very different from the Zero In Formula. Zero In Formula was more of a how-to typical business book, right? A nonfiction. Here's a bunch of stuff. Here's how you do it, and so on. So I decided, boy, as we've been talking, it's one thing to start your own business. There's technical things you need to know how to do, and I had to figure a lot of that stuff out. But then there's that internal transformation that you go through, especially if you're leaving corporate and starting your own business. You almost have to go through this detox or something where your whole way of looking at life has to change. I wasn't ready for that. I'm glad I went through it. I've changed so much. I wanted that to be a big part of the book. So I decided, instead of writing your typical how-to business book, I'm going to put this in the form of a fictional parable. I don't know about you, but some of my favorite business books are written as parables, like especially Patrick Lencioni type stuff. Like, I just love how he takes a story. He's got interesting characters. There's tension, there's drama, but you learn all the way through it. I'm going to try and do that. So that's what I set out to do. And I wanted that, that inner transformation, that inner journey to be a big part of the book.
Yeah. Nice. So in that, what sorts of character development are we experiencing there? Like, what's the journey at a high level here, just to give us a little taste?
Yeah. So obviously it's mostly based on my experience. It's not my story exactly. It's probably like 80% my story. I had to obviously make it more interesting and embellish stuff and add some extra drama, but it's really this guy. He's in his 40s. He's been a corporate guy his entire life, and he's gotten to the point where he's realized, I'm a workaholic. And why? What am I doing this for? I'm damaging my relationship with my wife. I'm damaging my relationship with my son. I'm damaging my physical health, my own emotional and mental health. Why am I doing this? I keep chasing the next promotion. I keep chasing the next pay raise. And for what? I've got a nice house. I've got all these toys, but they're not bringing me the life, the happiness that I want. So it kind of takes you on that journey of what's he thinking, and then what's that breaking point that makes him decide he's going to break free. And then, boy, what's that messy journey he goes through to leave the corporate world and all those temptations and all that workaholic tendencies he had, to start being a better husband, to start being a better father, to start designing his life while learning how to grow a business at the same time, with the naysayers, with the people that want to see him lose, with his wife, who's very encouraging, but frustrated at times that he can't, commit to this better life, right? So it really kind of takes you through that whole journey of what's really behind the scenes here of what somebody goes through when they're making that transition.
God, I was literally experiencing emotions as you were describing that. 5 months into being a solopreneur myself, I did the side hustling thing for 18 months before that. Just this past weekend, my wife and we pride ourselves on being we keep ourselves up in like a high plane. Like, we think optimistically. Some people would say like high vibrations, if you think about the woo-woo stuff, that kind of thing. But we had a moment of lack where we're like, compared to the lucrative cash flow of consulting, the salary, like when it was there, it's like, you don't even think about money. It just comes in.
Yeah.
Like it sucks. What you're sacrificing sucks. You're like hurting your health and you're losing time with family, but you don't have to worry about money so much because it's kind of coming in if you're, a high performer. But when it's gone, suddenly you have these new emotions like, oh shit. Like, and you start questioning things like, was it a good idea to leave corporate? Like, you had such steady cash flow, and you get in this moment of lack. Yeah. And it was only for like 30 minutes. And we pulled ourselves back up. We're like, oh, we're never going to think those crazy thoughts because here's all the benefits of us living this new life. But it's like those pains are very real. And when you pursue, especially something as lonely as solopreneurship, right? Not joining a startup or something, but solopreneurship, you're handling that psychological burden, those fears, those questions, all yourself. You're wrestling with that. So I love that you're getting inside the head of people, because I'd say at least half this game is psychology. When you win the mental battle, then you have the ability to win it externally and get results you want. But it has to be an inner game before you get to the outer game.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I had about maybe a dozen people beta read the manuscript, the first draft. And I specifically was looking for people who either have recently become solopreneurs or were thinking about becoming solopreneurs, or people that were kind of starting to get burnt out at their corporate job. I had them read it, and almost to a person, it was like, this is my story. That's my husband. That's my wife. That's my life. Those are my thoughts. Those are the fears that I have been having or whatever. And I was like, okay, this is it. I know that was my hope. That was my goal for the book was, yes, there's all kinds of how-to stuff in here. Yes, there's tips and strategies for building your own business. But the main theme I want to come out of it is that inner transformation, that inner journey that you go through.
Mm-hmm. Man, I can't wait for this to hit the masses. It's an important thing. And I love that you took the more parable style. It's just going to affect so many more brain cells for people in really good ways. Some people don't.
It was a challenge. Actually, here's an important story for the listeners here when it comes to starting your own solopreneur business, and why it's so important to niche down and be an expert. So when I wrote the Zero In Formula, I specifically was looking for an editor that specialized in business books, right? Nonfiction. Found one. She was amazing. Helped me a ton with the Zero In Formula. Right from writing it to publishing it to whatever, it was great. So when I was originally starting to write this book, I reached out to her and said, hey, I'm writing another book. This one's going to be in the form of a parable. She's like, yeah, you're going to have to find another editor. I'm like, what do you mean? You're awesome. She's like, you want somebody that specializes in fiction, and not just fiction, business parable fiction, because you're not writing science fiction. You're not writing crime fiction. You're not writing a love story. You're writing a business parable. And I thought, yeah, of course, this is what I advise my solopreneur clients to do, is niche down. You want the expert. I don't just want an editor. I don't just want a fiction editor. I want a business parable fiction editor for my book. So of course, that's what I went and found. And immediately when I saw all the books that he had helped to edit, yeah, this guy's the expert. Of course, that's the one I want. Whereas if I just started looking for any editor, I would have been questioning, is this really the one? Are they credible? Is they going to be helping with my book? But by him niching down and being a business parable editor, I knew right off the bat, this is the guy for me, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's the value of that, right? A person like that understands the psychology of your target persona, those you seek to serve, right? Yeah. That person is expert in communicating messaging and energy from what you want to say into their brains. He's like the transfer person, and your book is the medium, but it needs to come across in the right way so that energy transfer takes place from your book into their minds, and they go, boom, eureka. This is exactly what I needed to hear.
Oh yeah. And he taught me so much about character development and building tension and drawing the reader in, all the kind of stuff I didn't really have to think about when I was just writing nonfiction. And I love to learn. So it was like, man, this is great. I'm learning so much just by writing this book. It was amazing journey to go through.
I would love your take on this. This is a working hypothesis I have. So in the whole uncaged thing that I help people with, it's like I help keep them in their 9-to-5 in a way that's self-directed, where they're in control. Because I think most people should not outright leave the 9-to-5. That's my hypothesis, right? As someone that left.
Completely agree.
Right? But
as somebody who went through it, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And part two is, I think everyone should at least give it a go as an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean leave the 9-to-5.
Right.
But to your exact point, you said, as an entrepreneur, I tested myself, challenged myself, grew new muscles, tested and understood my potential in ways that I could never have while sitting comfortably in corporate. And that's the point. If it's for a 3-month stint, a 3-year stint, or maybe one day your side hustle evolves into you leaving and doing your own thing, I would say almost to a person, 100% of circumstances, at some point in your life, if you're in the corporate world, you have to do this too.
Yep.
You will regret it on your deathbed if you did not give yourself a chance. If you look at the top 5 regrets of the dying, they'll say like the top one is you lived a life according to others' wishes and you plugged into systems rather than living a life that was true to you, or some semblance of that, right? Yep. And if you think to your 80-year-old self, will they be happy that you plugged into other systems 100% of the time? Or will they say like, man, I'm really glad I gave it a shot for that year or two, or maybe it turned into something bigger. That's the thing. Even if you're in corporate, my argument would be go side hustle, take the principles of this book and do your own thing. You can do both. We both did. Like we figured out how to build something from nothing. What's your take on that?
100% agree. I'm a completely different person than I was 4 or 5 years ago. Not just learning how to grow a business, but I've had to change personally and grow, like in a good way, personally, because of my experience. The mantra I like to use for myself now is, okay, when I'm faced with something, solve for regret, right? I tell my business clients, you're solving for indifference, right? For myself, I'm solving for regret. Am I going to regret not taking this calculated risk? I'm not just going to go take any risk, but am I going to regret this? Am I going to look back on this when I'm in my 70s and 80s and go, man, why didn't I try that? Why didn't I take that trip? Why didn't I try and start that business? Why didn't I say yes to that partnership, right? Am I going to regret it? Or is this really just going to be a time suck for me? And it might be. So, but if I look at it in the lens of solving for regret, that usually helps me realize, yeah, this might be a good calculated risk to take on.
No, I love that we both anchor on that regret emotion. I just released a podcast on this, on the power of regret, based on Daniel Pink's book, The Power of Regret. The whole idea is like, you can learn from past regrets. You can anticipate your future regrets and pull all of that information into the now and do something about it. Aligned, messy action. Do something small day after day. Pay attention to that because it's going to bite you later. It's bit you in the past. You know it'll bite you in the future. So do something about it.
100%.
Wonderful. Let's shift a little bit. Just a few things to round us out here, Dennis. If you were starting your career today, we're in mid-2022, what advice would you give yourself?
Starting my corporate career or starting as solopreneur?
Great question. Let's say you are coming out of college with a computer science degree, just or a mainstream degree of any kind.
A computer science degree.
Perfect. You have a popular degree. You're fresh out of university. What advice would you give that person?
Stay curious, tinker. Don't get too comfortable with just your corporate job and the corporate paycheck. Now, having said that, I learned a ton my first couple of years on the job as a software engineer. Loved it, was soaking it up. But there's all kinds of stuff I could have done outside of that as well. I could have tried writing my own software and, doing things with friends and partnering up, and just the experience of tinkering and being curious and just not getting too lulled into, this is it. I've got my, biweekly paycheck and I've got a secure job. There's more to life than that.
Yeah. It makes me think, rather than just adopting or taking the conditions that are given to you. Like, I'm plugged into this work. Whatever work happens to me, whatever colleagues are around me, that's that. These are my conditions. Rather than just absorb that stuff, go create your own conditions, right? If this isn't doing for me, what can I do on the side? Where can I mix it up with? I mean, come on, it's 2022. If you don't have an online, like, digital reputation, which is AKA your personal brand, if you don't have that, what are you doing? If you are a serious knowledge worker in this environment, you have to go mix it up. If you want freedom, if you want time freedom, financial freedom, go lay irons in the fire. Yes, you can work comfortably for a corporate job. You can get amazing results out of that. You and I both had some in our career. And be entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, I guess, right?
It applies everywhere. It's a life principle, right? It's more than just stocks. Great. Dennis, where can people connect with you online and how can you help them?
I'm most active on LinkedIn. That would be the place where I post the most content, where I connect with the most people. So love connecting with people there. But probably my website, dennisgeelen.me, is another spot. And this is where they can see how I can help them if they're a new solopreneur or an overwhelmed solopreneur. That's where they can see my book, my online course, my coaching calls. That's a great spot to land then.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. And any closing message you'd want to leave with our uncaged audience here today?
Yeah, I guess two things. One, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Anything you're starting up, it's not going to be instant success, right? So go in expecting that and embrace it. Embrace the journey that you're on. Don't just be purely focused on whatever end goal or end result you think you're after. It's a journey, and the journey is amazing if you allow it to be. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is make your main goal about helping others, not about making a certain amount of money or attracting a certain amount of followers or whatever. Make your main goal about helping others. Those other things will happen if you truly are about helping others. How can I serve? How can I help? What's a specific challenge, a problem I can solve for a specific group of people, and do it. Start helping. If that's your goal and you embrace the journey, you're going to enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, those traditional measures of success, money and notoriety, all those things are a natural byproduct if you genuinely digging in with other humans and helping them with their problems, understanding them, getting better at solving them, helping them through that journey. I love that.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, Dennis, this was a wonderful conversation. I can't wait for people to get their hands on the Accidental Solopreneur. It's an important message. I love how unique it is, and it's a fictional parable. There's a lot we can learn, immerse ourselves in it. And I think our big point here that we are both violently nodding our heads on is corporate life can be great. You can make something of that, and you owe it to yourself, especially your future self, to go try something entrepreneurial. Take these solopreneur principles, absorb this book, look at the course, understand what you can apply, because you're going to regret it if you don't. So give yourself that shot. Embrace your journey. It's going to be different from everyone else's, and that's beautiful.
Yep, 100%.
Dennis, thanks for the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. It's been great.
You bet.
Hey, Matt here. Thanks for listening to Uncage Yourself. For show notes and more content like this, head over to uncageyourself.fm. And if you liked what you heard, I'd appreciate you leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, be well, my friend.